My parents humiliated me at my sister's graduation. They joked that I was a mistake compared to my perfect sister, so I shocked them by this. At my sister's graduation, I was consumed by shame for my own parents. They belittled me in front of everyone, including our closest relatives and friends. The event was meant to be a celebration of Elena, my elder sister. She was thrilled about embarking on her new journey, having recently graduated from college and secured a remarkable job. When my parents took the stage to speak in her honor, I anticipated they would make fitting remarks. Elena had undoubtedly worked diligently to achieve this milestone and deserved every bit of recognition. I was unsurprised when during their speech they lauded Elena as one of their greatest blessings. By then, I was old enough to discern that my parents held Elena in higher esteem than me. She had always been the more talented daughter, and my parents perpetually compared me to her detriment. Then, during their speech, they inexplicably started making jokes about how they should have ceased having children after Elena. They asserted that second-born children are generally unproductive. They claimed that if they had only Elena in their lives, they could have invested more time and energy in her instead of me. Hearing them utter such hurtful words so casually while I sat there left me dumbfounded. I looked around the room, hoping someone would recognize the disturbing nature of their statements, but all I saw were the faces of my relatives laughing along, as if this appalling comparison were merely light-hearted amusement. Although my parents had frequently made me feel inadequate and insignificant, this was the first time they had done so publicly, leaving me no place to hide from this harsh reality. In their view, I simply fell short in comparison to their exceptional daughter, Elena. This was not an isolated occurrence or a lapse in judgment. It validated what I had long suspected. I was viewed as an afterthought, while my older sister would forever be the daughter they cherished. Growing up as the second child, I had grown accustomed to the implicit favoritism in our household. It insidiously permeated their conversations, behaviors, and daily routines. My parents often neglected to wish me a happy birthday, and on multiple occasions they were away on business trips during my special day, leaving me alone. However, they would never forget Elena's birthday. Every year, without fail, both of my parents would be there, orchestrating a lavish celebration and ensuring she felt appreciated. Observing how they showered her with affection on her birthday taught me early on to curb my expectations and accept that my own birthday was not as important to them. As a child with strong opinions, my parents frequently told me I was disruptive or disagreeable simply for being myself. I was labeled as problematic because I didn't conform to the quiet, restrained mold they seemed to favor, and I was reprimanded for something as simple as being too talkative or expressing my interests candidly. Elena's serene temperament and introverted tendencies, conversely, were perpetually commended. In our family, she was regarded as the quintessential daughter, mature and well-mannered. Consequently, she was the one they proudly displayed and paraded in front of everyone. Throughout the years, I was the one who endured the most criticism. I attempted for a while to fit the image my parents seemed to desire. I invested effort, believing that if I behaved better, achieved more, or adhered to their plan, they would eventually perceive me differently. However, as I matured, it became evident that I couldn't simply transform myself into Elena's duplicate. We were two distinct individuals. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't be her. I eventually relinquished this pursuit and tried to adapt to their incessant adulation of her. The way they would boast about her accomplishments to anyone who would listen while disregarding everything I had ever done still caused me immense pain. Yet, all of those incidents, as devastating as they were, had at least remained within the confines of our household. I was astonished by how nonchalantly they revealed their deep-seated favoritism at Elena's graduation ceremony. All of those incidents, as traumatic as they were, had at least been kept within the family. I was taken aback by how casually my parents disgraced me during their speech at Elena's graduation. My parents had never before embarrassed me publicly, so they had never exposed to the rest of our extended family the extent of their disrespect for me. What wounded me even more was that no one in my entire family expressed disapproval or confronted my parents about their inappropriate behavior. No one even offered me a sympathetic glance after my parents made those jokes at my expense. My parents continued to extol Elena, and their tone conveyed a sense of pride that I had never experienced from them. Then they boldly announced that they had purchased her a graduation gift, a brand new car, which she had always longed for. As everyone's attention focused on Elena, who embraced my parents with love and gratitude, the room erupted in applause, laughter, and cheers. The three of them seemed genuinely content. I, on the other hand, felt like an outsider in my own family. The ironic thing is that I have never been envious of Elena. We had always gotten along well, and I believed she deserved any good fortune that came her way. But that speech shattered me. The truth is that after that dreadful speech, I confronted my parents. For years, I had silently endured their favoritism, disdain, and hurtful words. I internalized it all, convincing myself that if I remained strong and composed instead of becoming upset, things would eventually improve. But that evening, after their speech and their public mockery of me, I had reached my limit. I was tired of absorbing their negativity and pretending that their comments no longer stung. I resolved that I could no longer remain silent. I summoned the courage to speak up, hoping that my parents would recognize how deeply their actions had wounded me. I yearned for them to at least demonstrate that they cared enough to listen to me. I wanted them to acknowledge the pain they had caused over the years and understand the humiliation I felt in that moment. I believed that if I expressed my feelings, they would regret their words or at least feel remorse for making me feel so small. However, when I finally confronted them, I received a cold, dismissive response. They paid little heed to my words. Instead of offering an apology or expressing remorse, they accused me of exaggerating, as if years of being ignored and denigrated could be so easily brushed aside. They acted as if I had no right to be angry with them, as if my feelings were inconsequential. My father even went so far as to say that he had nothing to be proud of when it came to me, and that I shouldn't hold it against them if they were disappointed in who I was. I recall how casually he uttered those words, as if my existence didn't matter to him. My mother, on the other hand, told me to stop overreacting and chided me for being overly needy by getting upset over something so insignificant. It felt as if my parents were implying that I hadn't earned the basic respect due to a child because I hadn't accomplished enough, that I was somehow less deserving of their love and pride than Elena, simply because I wasn't her. The matter even came up with Elena, who defended our parents and insisted that I be less harsh on them. She said something that truly stung and that I'll never forget. I shouldn't have been so upset by their graduation speech because it was merely a harmless joke. She assured me that if I had studied and worked hard like she did, I could make them proud too. Her words cut deep, implying that all my years of effort were invisible to her, that my struggles and attempts to find a job were irrelevant. I had expected my older sister to be my ally, but instead, she sided with our parents. That conversation was a turning point for me. I realized then that I had to let go of my family. I was done trying to win their approval. done explaining myself to them, and done hoping for love and affirmation that would never come. I decided to focus on building a life for myself. From that day forward, I dedicated myself to my studies, concentrating on things I could control and creating my own destiny. 2 years later, my hard work paid off when I was accepted into my dream college on a full scholarship. This was a personal triumph, a testament to my dedication, perseverance, and refusal to let my family's neglect define me. For the first time, I felt like I had accomplished something truly meaningful. When I shared the news with my parents, they were stunned, as if they had never expected me to attend college, let alone on a scholarship. Elena scrutinized my acceptance letter twice, as if she couldn't believe I was capable of achieving anything on my own. It was clear that they had all underestimated me, and their surprise gave me a small sense of satisfaction. I simply shook my head at their reaction, but my mother then soured the moment by saying that it was a good thing I had received a full scholarship because they hadn't saved any college funds for me anyway. Despite their lack of foresight in saving for my education, my parents had no problem paying Elena's tuition. When it was time to move out, I packed my belongings and left for my college apartment. That day, I made the firm decision to sever all ties with Elena and my parents. I felt no need to explain my actions. After all, they had consistently demonstrated that my feelings, opinions, and values held little weight with them. Why should I waste my energy trying to explain something they had proven incapable of understanding? Since they hadn't even offered an apology for the years of neglect and pain they had caused me, I knew that arguing with them was futile. Over the next few weeks and months, my family contacted me frequently, sending emails and messages in the vain hope that they had reconsidered their actions and were reaching out to make amends. Initially, I felt compelled to open them. However, each message served as a bitter reminder of who they were. Their communications were filled with attempts to gaslight me into believing that I was the one at fault. Instead of taking responsibility for the years of emotional distress they had caused, they insisted that I had overreacted and dismissed my decision to end our relationship as immature and impulsive. Their messages always returned to the same underlying message. I was the one breaking up the family, and therefore I was wrong to cut them off. I never bothered to respond to any of them. So far, my college experience has been incredibly positive. I have been able to focus on my studies, hobbies, and most importantly, building relationships with people who love and appreciate me for who I am. Working part-time at a local diner has allowed me to save money for the future. I enjoy meeting new people at the diner and hearing about their lives. By immersing myself in my studies, social life, and everything my new environment has to offer, I haven't missed my family or wondered how they are doing. However, yesterday I received an unexpected email from my parents. It came as a shock. They had stopped writing to me a long time ago because I had never responded to any of their previous messages. In this email, they implored me to contact them immediately as they had some distressing news to share. Despite everything, years of hurt and rejection couldn't erase the lingering feeling that something terrible had happened. My heart raced as I imagined the worst, a family member gravely ill or, even worse, deceased. Despite my resolve to keep my distance, fear crept in, and my heart pounded as I braced myself for whatever news they were about to deliver. I grabbed my phone, unblocked their numbers, and called them back immediately. The news my parents wanted to share concerned Elena, who was going through a difficult time. They revealed that she had been grappling with drug addiction, which had severely impacted her life. Her addiction had escalated to the point where she had lost her job, depleted her savings, and was now left with no resources or options. The news caught me completely off guard. I had no idea Elena was struggling with anything like this. She had always been my reliable, high-achieving sister. It was difficult to comprehend that she had fallen victim to something as destructive as drug addiction. My parents' disbelief and desperation were palpable. They seemed more concerned about how this would affect their reputation if others found out than about Elena's well-being. They hoped I would have some answers for them as they described the situation. Elena had always appeared so grounded and responsible, making it all the more shocking that she, of all people, had succumbed to something as dangerous as heroin addiction. My father then asked me in a suspicious tone, "You didn't introduce her to drugs back then, did you?" The implication stunned me. Not only was the notion preposterous, but it was also deeply insulting that they would even entertain the possibility that I had anything to do with Elena's troubles, let alone something as serious as introducing her to drugs. I had never used drugs myself, and I hadn't spoken to Elena or the rest of my family in years due to their mistreatment of me. I had distanced myself from their toxicity and focused on building my own life. It seemed that in the face of their idealized image of Elena crumbling, they were quick to point fingers at someone else, and I was the easiest target. I advised them to talk to Elena before jumping to conclusions, and told them that their suspicion of me was unfounded. Throughout our conversation, it became evident that my parents were more preoccupied with the shame that would befall the family if Elena's addiction became public knowledge than with her actual well-being. My mother seemed fixated on her immaculate daughter's secret struggles, repeatedly expressing her disbelief and concern about how others would react if they ever found out. Elena and Dad were overwhelmed and unprepared to handle the situation, so my mother pleaded with me to return home to help them care for Elena. "I can't help Elena. She needs professional help," I stated unequivocally. I stressed that if they truly cared about her recovery, the best and most compassionate course of action would be to admit her to a treatment facility where she could receive specialized care from trained professionals, but my father immediately rejected the idea of rehab, practically trembling at the thought of their family name being tarnished by her admission to a treatment center. He was fixated on the potential damage to their reputation. He argued that sending her to rehab would only serve to damage their standing in the community. The thought of people knowing that their accomplished daughter was struggling with something as serious as heroin addiction terrified him. My father chided me for even suggesting rehab, as if openly acknowledging her addiction was more shameful than the addiction itself, and as if constant surveillance would magically solve the problem. Dad insisted that I return home, and that the three of us work together to care for Elena, keeping her under constant watch to prevent a relapse. He kept reiterating how much they wanted Elena to get better and return to her normal life as soon as possible. Their belief was that as long as no one else knew, everything would go back to normal. They wanted me to participate in their charade, pretending everything was fine while hiding Elena's problems from the world. I listened in disbelief and anger. Why were my parents so fixated on appearances and what others thought of them? This was an opportunity for them to truly step up, to show that they could prioritize their daughter's needs over their own image and potentially save her life. My sister was clearly suffering, yet they were still struggling to do the right thing. It was obvious that they hadn't changed at all, and now they were trying to lure me back in, asking me to help them maintain their facade by assisting them in caring for the sister they had always compared me to. I told them I needed time to think things over. I couldn't just drop everything and leave. After all, I had classes and a job to consider. My parents insisted that I take at least 2 or 3 weeks off to help them, claiming they desperately needed me. I'm conflicted about the whole situation. Part of me wants to see what I can do for Elena to ensure she's okay. But another part of me is resentful, wanting to let my parents deal with their golden child on their own. I'm not sure I can be of much help when they are more concerned with saving face than with addressing the root of the problem. Even now, I'm still wrestling with the decision of whether or not to return home and care for my drug-addicted sister. This story has unexpectedly resonated with many people. It's taking me some time to go through the numerous comments I've received. I wanted to clarify a few things. I don't harbor any ill will towards Elena. In fact, I want to help her and genuinely care about her. However, having been estranged from my family for 3 years, I have found a level of peace and stability that I didn't have before. I'm apprehensive that reconnecting with Elena might open the door for my parents to re-enter my life as well. I honestly don't know what to expect. In case you're wondering, Elena could have been battling heroin addiction for years, possibly even before my parents discovered it. It's evident that Elena, the golden child, was always praised and held up as the ideal daughter, often under immense pressure to maintain that image. This kind of pedestal minimizes vulnerability and the possibility of failure. Any failure, no matter how small, could have been devastating for her. If Elena believed her worth was solely determined by her achievements and how others perceived her, drugs could have become a coping mechanism over time, a way to escape the weight of those expectations or the fear of disappointing our parents. I feel even more heartbroken thinking about my sister potentially suffering in silence all this time without my knowledge. I wish she had felt comfortable confiding in me sooner, before things spiraled out of control. I would have wanted to be there for her, to support her through it. It just makes me feel helpless. If only I had known about this significant part of her life, maybe I could have helped her. My parents, both high achievers themselves, expected the best from me and my sister from a young age. Personally, I need some time to process everything. I'll update you if anything further develops. After much introspection and encouragement from some of the comments I read, I decided to reach out to Elena. She is my sister after all. I felt it was imperative to hear from her directly rather than relying on my parents' version of events. I initially sent her a brief text message inquiring if she wanted to talk. She responded a few hours later, but only consented to a phone call. When we finally spoke, the voice on the other end of the line sounded like a mere echo of the sister I knew. Elena's tone was noticeably subdued, softer, and more cautious. She gradually revealed what she had been enduring. She confessed that she had been struggling with addiction for several years. It commenced shortly after college, when she started working at Thank You for Watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our shocking real-life stories.